Good afternoon, everybody. Buenas tardes a todos. We're going to have Spanish interpretation available. To access language interpretation, please click on the globe icon that says interpretation at the bottom of your screen. It may be available in the more icon with a circle and 3 dots. You may then select Spanish. Si necesitan acceder a traducción simultánea, por favor, hagan clic en el mundo que hay en la esquina derecha de su pantalla y ahí pueden seleccionar interpretación en español. We are so happy to be here today with you all. This is the Leading California into a Brighter Future webinar. And we're going to get started in about a minute so we can get all the people in. So again, Spanish interpretation is available. Please, you can just go click on the globe and you can access Spanish interpretation. Okay, so let's get started. My name is Tania Villarroel, and I'm a policy advisor in childhood education at UnidosUS. And I'm so happy to have you all here today for this amazing webinar, Leading California into a Brighter Future. This webinar is hosted by Abriendo Puertas, Opening Doors, APOD, and UnidosUS. And today we have here to join our discussion, Javier Martinez, Managing Director of National Policy at APOD, Alicia Moreno Ramirez, Director of Multilingual Initiative at the CDE, Karen Crolat, Director of Policy at Early Edge California, Steve Ciañez, California Senior Strategist at UnidosUS, and Joanna Perez, Parent Advocate and a member of the Latino Infant Initiative Advisory Council. Today's conversation builds on insights from the 2025 National Latino Family Report, which highlights the top priorities for Californian families: economic opportunity, access to affordable healthcare, immigrant rights, and bilingualism. Together with our panelists, we'll explore what these findings mean for policy, advocacy, and community leadership. And please, as we move forward into the webinar, please use the Q&A function for any questions that you may have for the panelists. I don't know if we're sharing the slides. We can go to the next slide. Thank you. So what is the Latino Infant Initiative? This is a collaboration between UnidosUS and Abriendo Puertas, Opening Doors. And we, because we know how important is the prenatal to age 3 stage. We know that 80% of the brain development happens in that stage. And we know that everything that we do for our children prenatal to age 3 will affect them for life. So the Latino Infant Initiative is targeted, it wants to advance and close the gaps for Latinos in the specific stage. Because we know that in California, we have big gaps. We have 1.7 million children ages 0 to 3. Half of them are Latinos, and nearly 60 of them are dual language learners. But only 1 in 9 eligible infants and toddlers get subsidized care. Many families face costs and are much higher than that they can afford, and low pay for early educators makes them really hard to get them into the classrooms. Families of dual language learners also face misinformation. All these gaps is what the Latino Infant Initiative wants to address, to support Latino infants and their families so they can thrive. And with that, I would like to hand it over to Javier Martinez, who will provide the data from the National Latino Family Report that focuses on California. Javier?
Thank you, Tanya, and good afternoon, everybody. The 2025 Latino Family Report can be found on your screen if you scan that QR code. This is the fourth iteration of the report. This is a national survey, a national poll that is conducted along with UnidosUS, APOD, by our colleagues at BSP Research. The poll was conducted earlier this year between late January and early February. It surveys roughly 1,400 Latino parents and caregivers of children 5 years or younger. These are Latino parents and caregivers, I should say. It is a representative sample from across the country with five oversamples. Those states are Texas, Florida, Arizona, New Mexico, and then California, specifically Los Angeles County, which is the highlight that I will present to us here today. Um, in terms of the three sort of overarching issues that I will highlight in terms of LA County, we're going to look at economic opportunity, we're going to look at healthcare, and we're going to look at immigration. In 2024, California had the third highest cost of living in the country, behind only Hawaii and Massachusetts. And housing and utility cost played a huge role in this state's ranking. When we asked in the 2025 Latino Family Survey, uh, what were the most important issues facing the Latino community, those families surveyed in California responded that 39% of them responded that addressing the rising cost of living and inflation was their top priority, followed closely by improving wages and income, and then after that, affordable and attainable housing, which we know is a problem across the nation. And if you dig through our full report, you'll see this play out throughout that national poll. But it's specifically difficult in California. 98% of those in California said that making housing more affordable is important, with 83% saying it is very important. 99% of California respondents rated bringing down the cost of household items like groceries as an important issue. 54% of those surveyed at the time believed that President Trump's economic policies, again, this is back in January, that President Trump's policies would harm their family's financial situation. Now, this is consistent with national trends, and the largest percentage of California families in the survey's history, 45%, reported that their financial situation had actually worsened. So now we're talking President Biden's last year in office. 90% of those surveyed support revising the earned income tax credit and child tax credit to ensure that families get a $5,000 per child tax credit. Now, this feels a little bit silly to even mention now because the discussion has shifted so much from late last year, where we were still talking about the importance of child tax credit and the earned income tax credit, to the current policies of this current administration, which we know have been um, detrimental to the economy. When it comes to healthcare, California families reported having the highest rates of insurance coverage of all the oversample states. For those of you joining us from California, you have a pretty incredible healthcare coverage system through Medi-Cal that's been in existence for many, many years. And so that is reflected in this poll. 86% of those surveyed report that they themselves have insurance. Of those, 49% report that their insurance covers all of their needs. So roughly half of them. That's higher when you look at the national poll. This is higher than in the other communities. On immigration, support for immigrant rights is very strong in California. No big surprise there. 91% of respondents saying that Congress and Trump should prioritize protecting immigrants during the administration's first year. Again, of course, this is very different today than it was back in January. Roughly 79%, or roughly 80%, 79% oppose mass deportations of immigrant families compared to 69% nationally. Um, Again, California leading the charge here as well. And then 40% responded that they might avoid talking to the police or report crimes due to Trump's then political promises of mass deportations. Uh, so, we are in the process of revising, retooling, redrafting, and repolling Latino parents and caregivers of young children for the 2026 National Family Latino Report. That survey will likely be out in late spring. And we will follow up on a lot of these numbers that you see here today and that you see in the full report. And I would assume that we're going to see some shifts for sure, given both the economic and immigration policies that the administration has actually pursued in its first year. Tanya, I'll kick it back to you.
Thank you so much, Javier, for taking us through this report. It's, well, we'll go into it with our panelists. And now I'd like to give our panel the opportunity to introduce themselves and their crucial work on the ground in more detail. So we have an amazing panel here, and we'll get started with Carolyn. Can you introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carolyn Corlott. I'm Director of Policy with Early Edge California. Our organization is an advocacy organization focused on increasing access to high quality early learning and care for children birth to age 8 here in California. And we have a strong focus on supporting multilingual learners and dual language learners who Tanya just shared represent nearly 60% of children birth to age 5 here in California. So really excited to be here. We also have a strong focus on supporting our immigrant families. So just happy to uplift our work and this important report and how we can support our communities here in California. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Carolyn. It's great to having you. And now I'll ask Alicia to introduce herself, please.
Hi, buen dia. My name is Alicia Morena Ramirez, and I'm the director of the Multilingual Support Division at the California Department of Education. The really focus of our work in the division within the MSD is the development of guidance and resources and the provision of technical assistance for various state programs like the State Seal of Biliteracy and dual language education, as well as two really critical federal programs, Title I Part C for migrant education and Title III Part A for English learner and immigrant students. And central to our work in MSD is the California English Learner Roadmap Policy, which is supportive of nearly about 40% of our students with multilingual experience. And it calls for multilingual students to have full and meaningful access to a 21st century education from early childhood through grade 12 and beyond, with the intent that they are provided the opportunity to attain high levels of English proficiency and proficiency in many languages in addition to English, as well as academics. And it's also a privilege to be here amongst this panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alicia, for joining us today. It's great having you. And now I'll ask Steve, please, to introduce himself.
Yes. So first of all, you guys can hear me, right? Because okay, great. Yeah. So I want to start off by saying that I'm the proud grandfather of a beautiful and strong 1-year-old, and I am committed. I'm committed to making sure that early child care services and education is available to all children, right? So I'm committed to that. My name is Steve Ciañez, and I am the state senior policy strategist for Unidos. And Unidos, as you might know, is the largest Latino civil rights organization in the country. We have over 300 community-based affiliates in the country, and 74 of those are in California. And almost half of those or more than half of those, have a education component or program as part of their mission. Um, our history goes back to the midst of the civil rights movement, and our story, like many other civil rights organizations, is one based on struggle and hope. And so that's kind of like the lens that we look at the early child care education question, that we use to kind of analyze and think about what we can do to make sure that we serve all kids in California. Thank you. Pleasure being on this panel. Buenas tardes, everyone.
Thank you, Steve. And now finally we'll have Joanna. Introduce yourself, please.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope everyone can hear me. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I am privileged and honored to be a part of this panel. So I have a background as a parent advocate for the last 6 years. That has been a very important part of my life. I am a mother of 8 children, 6 of those who are still in the school system, 2 of those currently in early Head Start and Head Start. And so just being a very involved uh, parent in the community, as well as, throughout the years, being able to support my community, the Latino, 0 to 5 community, through working with the Latino Infant Council, Rapid California surveys, and just really, as Steve shared, due to my personal love of children, always want to make sure that there is proper representation for our Spanish speaking and multilingual families, especially understanding that our children from 0 to 5 are sponges, right? And this is the time that we need to really have impact, in language and just every learning aspect of their brain. Um, and so I'm always, for advocating and supporting not only the families and children, but even the staff, the people on the ground doing the work, whether it's policy, whether it's teachers in the classroom. And so I'm just excited to be a part of this team.
Thank you so much, Joanna. Thank you for all the work that you do. And thank you, everybody, Caroline, Alicia, Steve, and Joanna, for providing us more insight into the meaningful work that is taking place in your respective organizations. And now I'd like to dive into some of the questions that we have for you and to get this conversation started. And before that, I'll remind everybody that please, if you have questions for the panelists, write them in the Q&A part of the Zoom. So I'd like to get started with Alicia. And here's a question for you. So your work focuses a lot on equity and protecting the rights of multilingual learners. Based on what you're seeing, what are the biggest equity challenges for dual language learners right now? And where can this data make a difference?
Well, I appreciate the fact that you asked this question and the fact that we are still talking about equity. I think that's of utmost concern. I think among the biggest equity challenge, from my perspective, is access, access to high quality dual education programs, particularly in the early years. High quality play-based dual language programs, I think, are essential. And I might add dual language programs that provide coherence from early care into early education and into the TK 16 years and beyond. I think that we are bound by the limitations of staffing, for example. I think that that's a barrier. I think funding is sometimes a barrier. And so we really need to alleviate those barriers. I think we need to work to ensure that programs are spread and represented across all areas of the state, including in our small, more rural communities. And I think we can do it. I think we have the interest and the desire. I think it's about coordinating our system to ensure that all students have access and really can uplift this idea that multilingualism is for all and it is an asset. And we want parents to know that, I think, as well. So I think if we can create the demand, we can concurrently create the workforce that is prepared to respond to that demand in order to really strengthen access to dual language programs for our students from the youngest years and continually beyond.
Yes, and thank you for that. And that's the perfect segue to what I want to ask Carolyn about the misconceptions about raising bilingual children. Because as Alicia mentioned, there are misconceptions, right? So from your perspective, Carolyn, what are the most common myths you still hear, and what does the research actually tell us about the benefits of bilingualism?
Yes, thank you so much for that question. So, here in California, for actually nearly 20 years, we were under an English only policy. So, K-12 schools were not allowed to have bilingual instruction for almost 20 years. And that changed actually not too long ago in 2017 with the passage of Prop 58. And so now we're seeing more bilingual programs coming out, but we're also still facing, the repercussions of those almost 20 years of English only here in California, not just from teachers, but also families. And so a lot of the things we hear are, oh, for my child to be successful in English, I need to speak only English with my child. And so actually the opposite is true. What children really need is to have a strong foundation in their home language, and that actually helps them learn English. And so if families are not speaking their home language and not providing that home language foundation for children, it will be harder for them to learn English. Um, and then they'll also not be able to reap all of the wonderful benefits that are associated with bilingualism, cognitive, socio-emotional, so many benefits that bilingualism brings. And so definitely, and not just that, but children also need strong language models. So if parents are speaking a language that is not their most proficient, that's not helping provide very strong language models for their children. So we really want to encourage families to speak their home language, continue to develop their children's home language. And then another thing that we hear is, oh, I should put my child in an English only program. Or, oh, I can teach them, Spanish or their home language at home, and then they'll learn English at school. However, if we can provide bilingual programs, those are the best for our children. And it will not just help them develop their two languages and reap all of the benefits of bilingualism, but also allows them to develop that academic language that is much more difficult to develop in the home. And then another piece that we hear is, that learning more than one language at the early age will confuse children or cause language delays. And actually, the research shows us that all children, even, including children who have disabilities, have the capacity to learn multiple languages if they're given enough stimulus, and language models in both languages. So we really want to encourage the development of both languages and encourage families to speak their home language at home.
Thank you so much. I agree with everything you said. And it's interesting how we see that reflected also in the California survey, where over 90% of the parents want their children to be bilingual. But when we ask them if they're taking them to bilingual programs, many of them say no because they are speaking Spanish at their home. And so it's very interesting what you just mentioned about the importance of bilingual programs. And with that, I'm going to ask Steve now. Um, from a statewide policy and equity perspective, what stands out to you in the California data regarding barriers Latino families in accessing high quality early learning programs?
Thank you, Tanya, for that question. I think when we look at the data and the recent survey, what is evident, right, and consistent with other national surveys, is that the top two issues that float to the top are related to affordability. We know that families want improved wages and income. That's one thing they've told us in the survey. And we also know that families want our government and leaders to address the rising cost of living and inflation. So those are two pocketbook issues that are very important to them. So as it relates to early child care education, specifically for infants and toddlers ages 0 to 3, the current cost for service is basically, I would say, unaffordable for many Latino families. In California, when you look at the typical center-based child care provider, those costs shoot up to almost 20,000 per year. And when you look at home-based care costs, those are about $17,000. So what does this mean for our Latino families? Well, if you're the average married couple, that means that about 15% of their income is going to childcare, right? Now, for single parents, though, that percentage more than triples to almost 47%. Basically, that means that if you're a single working parent, half of your income will be spent on childcare. So just think about that, right? And despite California's subsidy programs, I mean, I think we're still at 89% of eligible children still lack access to subsidized care, child care. So, what I think we should do is start viewing early child care education as a social justice issue, as opposed to a charity or government handout. Because currently we call early child care and for children ages 0 to 3, a subsidized government program, right? And I think this approach is fundamentally wrong. And let me explain why I believe so. Because charity is asking the question of what is wrong and how can I help? A social justice question, if we tend and if we decide to view it that way, is asking why is this wrong and what do we need to do to fix it? As a policymaker, as a legislator, it's asking the why and it is asking for an action, right? And that makes us kind of dive deeper into the issue and forces us to think harder about creating meaningful and structural change as opposed to just providing a band-aid. So I'll stop right there because I know I can go on and on, but I'll stop right there. And I hope that answered the question, Tanya.
Yes, and we'll have more time to keep talking about this because this is the core of the issue, right? Like how do we frame this to be able to actually advocate for access to high quality early childhood education for Latinos in California? That's just as simple as that. But now I want to give some time to Joanna to share with us because her perspective as a parent advocate is really, really important. And one of the things that the survey, the data that we just heard from Javier is housing. Housing is a major concern. So I'd like to know what kind of housing challenges do you see affecting Latino families with young children? Is it affordability, overcrowding, stability? How does housing stability influence child health and development?
Well, I mean, first of all, as we know, we're specifically talking about California. And so
Right.
that alone, we know that the housing market prices are, insane. Um, I know that there is a lot of statistics out there about, California natives are leaving California. We are being bought out, out of our homes. We are um, not able to afford to stay in California, in all honesty, but specifically impact when I say 0 to 5 children. Um, I'll share a little bit of my personal experience. I live in South Central, so that is a very underserved and marginalized community, right? We're talking about Inglewood, Compton, and you know all those neighboring areas. And so the impact that that has for families with young children is one, quality childcare centers, right? We don't have the same quality childcare centers that people do in Beverly Hills, in Venice, in Santa Monica, like which are not very far away from us, but it seems like a totally different world. So the difference, right, just based on what area you live in California. Um, multilingual or bilingual. Unfortunately, our teachers who are bilingual, who are multilingual, um, don't get the pay, right? So when they don't get the pay, then they leave to these bigger districts, to the bigger schools, right? Because they need in order to survive the housing market in California. They need to make a certain amount of income. And so I feel it's a ripple effect, right? And in California, I unfortunately see how we are trying to conquer the homelessness in our state, but main focus being taking people out of the streets, right? We all, I believe in this sector, know that homelessness is not just people living out on the street, right? It's families who are sharing a home, right? There's 2 or 3 families living in one same household, right? That is still considered homeless. We're not targeting those people. Um, People who are couch surfing, right? They're staying with a family member or they're staying in somebody's garage. Those people are also homeless. But again, there's no one's looking into the families who are displaced, but because they're not out literally on the street, we're not thinking of these people as homeless. So I think for the housing in California, there's a lot of room to improve if we're specifically talking about how do we help the Latino community with 0 to 5 children? Because again, we also know that the importance of stability, right, in a child, feeling safe and secure. For my own family, we experienced almost 6 months of homelessness a few years ago due to a fire in our apartment. We were couch surfing with family. I didn't know I was considered homeless, right? Until I went to apply for Head Start. And they said, on our point system, you get extra points because you are considered homeless. I learned that. And I wonder how many other families are going through this homeless experience and don't even realize that they are, you know? But that early Head Start program was became a support system for me and my family. And so I know how important they are. I know the safety and security that my children received from this particular program, right? And so I would just love to see more of that out in our communities.
Thank you so much, Joanna, for sharing. And it's so important and so deep. And yes, early Head Start, we think about it as childcare, but it's not childcare, right? It's so much more than that. The support system that goes around all these programs are really, really important for families. And we have a question now. So I want to open it up for Q&A. So please, if you have any questions, just put them here in the Q&A chat. And I'd like to invite all the panelists to answer these questions that we have now. And I think that we're missing Joanna in the spotlight if I see what everybody's seeing. Right? Okay, well. So I'll start with this question that we got from the Q&A, and please feel free to answer. It says, many families, especially Latinos, choose childcare with a family member or a friend. How are families that choose home-based childcare supported in California? Who would like to answer this question?
I can share a little bit. So great question. And yes, definitely, there's so much support that our home-based providers can, share with our families, and many provide the same language and cultural match as the communities that they serve. And so we at Early Edge, we're always working to uplift our home-based providers who do a lot of work around family, friend, and neighbor providers and supporting family childcare. Right now families are eligible to, for vouchers and other, state preschool program that can be offered through family child care if they're part of what's called a Fetch-In Family Child Care Home Network. And there are some supports that families can get, but there's still a long way to go. Right now, we're working to support the true cost of care in California for our home-based and other providers, because right now the state reimbursement is very low and not in alignment with the actual cost of providing care. And we really need to uplift our home-based providers, uplift the reimbursement rates, and uplift our pay for our providers and the staff who work in those centers, so that we can really support our families.
Thank you so much, Caroline. I don't know if anyone else wants to add to this.
Well, if I can jump in, going back to the way we look at things, the lens that we use, the way we frame the issue, right, and how we cut it. It's good. It's an option that Latino families have the opportunity to leave their their children, right, with a home-based center, right, which is good, right? But it's still, I think, it doesn't answer the question, I believe, of why they're doing it, right? And I think it goes back to, you know, resources. And it's why is it that some people have to do that versus other people taking their kid to a center-based childcare with perhaps very qualified early child care educators. And so the question is about disparities, right? It's about inequities. And these are tough, very tough topics to tackle. And I just want to go back to the data in a recent survey, right? Is that we have to ask, why is it that early child care is unaffordable for many single parents, right? And when we create these subsidies programs, right, and when we give money to these early child care educators that are home based, then we have to ask the question of, why are they being paid an average of $14 an hour? And Carolyn just brought that up, right? And most of the child care providers are women of color, many of them Latinas. So I think that when we look at this question, and if we dig deeper, we tend to understand that there's things that we can do as a state to fix them, to prioritize them, and to make them part of our state budget, right? And so I think it's critical. It's important for our present and our future as a state and as a nation, that we address this issue. And if it's not free, at least make it affordable childcare education, right? And because we know it's what our constituents and our families want. It's what the survey and data is saying. It is abundantly clear, right? Um, and then another thing is we need to have this urgency of now and avoid kicking the can down the road. Our kids can't wait. They're growing up, right?
Thank you, Steve. Um, yes, affordability is very, very important. Alicia, do you want to?
I would love to chime in here, and it won't answer the question directly, but I think what I'd really like to uplift here is for parents and families to know that they are the first and most important educators in their child's lives. I want them to know that doing things like talking to the children, singing with the children, oral storytelling, you don't have to have a lot of resources. A lot of resources are wonderful, are really great to have, and they certainly augment and enhance experiences. But there's so many things that happen at the home that are of value. Talking with them, engaging with them, rhyming with them, singing songs with them. There are so many wonderful opportunities if parents understand how important it is. And I want to also echo Carolyn's comment earlier that home language is critical. So we want parents and families to know that they should be engaging with their children in their home and family language. Not only is it good for the relationship, it really is a positive supporter of illiteracy development and biliteracy development. Just wanted to make sure that parents don't feel like they're stuck or like there's a deficit orientation if that is the form of childcare that they have access to.
Thank you so much, Alicia. I definitely agree. The parents being the first teachers of the children is something that we should all embrace and be so proud of, because it's such an amazing and important job that we have. And I wanted to bring up something that actually Steve mentioned, and it's the workforce, the early childhood education workforce. We know that the teacher pipeline is a major issue for expanding dual language programs. And maybe, Alicia, you can also talk a little bit about this. How is California supporting the early childhood education bilingual pipeline?
This is another really great question. And I will say there are certainly things in place, but there's a lot of opportunity to grow here. I think one of the things that I'll call out is the Bilingual Teacher Professional Development Program grant, which is a program to ensure that California can meet the ongoing demand for bilingual teachers necessary for the implementation of dual language education programs and other bilingual programs. It's a 5-year program with $20 million investment. I think there are other things that we could see and we'd love to see, but I feel like this is a step in the right direction. As Carolyn mentioned earlier, we really are. And part of me wants to say we're kind of in recovery mode, but I think this is also a renaissance when it comes to bilingual education, because for so long we were kind of mired in this experience where there was a suggestion that bilingualism or bilingual education programs weren't as valuable as English medium experiences, and that is, we know that's absolutely untrue. There are a couple of other things that I'd like to point out as well, because I think these are lesser known. One of them that I'd like to call out is the California Mini Core program, and this is a program where college age tutors work directly in classrooms to support migratory students. And a secondary benefit to the program, outside of these students having this really amazing mentorship and support, is that it's a training ground for aspiring teachers, inclusive of tutors with bilingual bicultural experience. And the CMC tutors receive really robust professional learning and training, even as college students, in the areas of foundational literacy and numeracy and mathematics. And many of these students go on to become classroom teachers, bilingual classroom teachers with a tremendous amount of knowledge and experience. They really do hit the ground running when they enter California classrooms. And I think another avenue for thinking about expansion of dual language programs for our early learners is also the state seal of biliteracy. And this is where I think a number of local communities do really well when they grow their own. There were over 75,000 seals of biliteracy earned in 87 languages across our state. And these young people are primed with the biliteracy experience, and they're a strong pool for recruitment. And so I think when LEAs reach out to these students, demonstrate that they will have jobs. There are opportunities to enter the workforce in your local community if you obtain this state seal of biliteracy, this distinguished honor. I think that's another a great channel. So I will pause there, but I do think that I think there are a lot of places that we need to be looking, and also a lot of opportunity that we need to be thinking about in order to further strengthen.
Thank you so much, Alicia, for that. And Carolyn, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, I was just gonna say yes to everything that Alicia just shared, and just share a couple more opportunities that we have here in California. So we recently, expanded our universal preschool program through transitional kindergarten to become the state with the largest universal preschool program in the nation, and that's really something to celebrate and something very exciting. And as part of that, we really do have an opportunity to take that TK expansion and use it as an opportunity to really expand our bilingual programs. Many programs or districts, they'll start in kindergarten with dual language programs, but that's really a missed opportunity, especially with what Tanya shared about those first 5 years of life, not just for brain development, but for language development and bilingual development. It's really a key prime opportunity for that. So we really want to expand those bilingual programs in transitional kindergarten and even before. And recently there was a study done by Learning Policy Institute that showed that only right now 7% of TK programs are dual language. And so we really have a long way to go there. And as part of that, it involves the bilingual teacher pipeline that we still need to build up. And we also have an opportunity with our other early learning and care programs through the revisions that are happening right now with the child development permit, which is being renewed for, I think since 1994, this was not revised, and so it's being revised now. And so in alignment with our state policies like the English Learner Roadmap, Proposition 58, we can really support the revisions to the child development permit to support our bilingual children and bilingual program expansion.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. And that takes us to the policy solutions, right? We were talking before about all the challenges that dual language learners and Latino children 0 to 3 face in California. And now we're moving to some of the solutions. And I would like to ask Steve about the opportunities that you see in California to advance equity in early learning policies for Latino families. What do you think?
Yeah, thank you, Tanya. I mean, I think, overall, California is on the right track, right? I mean, it's not, I think we have a deep understanding, a deep connection with our communities. We know what they need, right? And sometimes, unfortunately, it is an issue of funding, right? I mean, heading into the 2026 session, we know that California is facing a close to $18 billion deficit, right? So that, money is going to make a difference. Funding is going to make a difference. But I also think it's an opportunity for us to really make sure that we prioritize early child care education, and we know the benefits. The research is pretty clear, right? It's right there. But also ask the questions about, for example, we were talking, Joanna was talking about, she lives very close to Venice. She lives very close to some of these neighborhoods that, if you look at the average income per family is, very high, right? It's extremely high compared to the surrounding communities. So, making sure that we are not tone deaf to that, right? And making sure that we are looking at, how do we bring services, quality services to all the children, specifically ages 0 to 3, that are high quality and that have the dual language immersion component to them. Now, right now, if we look at how many children are enrolled in child care services that under the California State Preschool Program, um, we know that 60% of these children are dual language learners. Unfortunately, only 15% of these children have access to a dual language immersion programs, right? So, I mean, these are some of the issues that are real, that our families, our parents are feeling, and that we need to address, right? And again, I think it's a call for action. It's a call for commitment, and it is about addressing and having an urgency of now to say we need to do something about this. And I think we are on the right track, right? We are on the right track, and I'm proud to call myself a Californian. And so, yeah, overall, that's my perspective and my analysis.
Thank you, Steve, so much for that. And I don't know, Joanna, if you're available, I would. Oh, great. Because I wanted to also talk about your perspective as a parent about all of this that we're talking about. And one of the things that we saw in the survey, and one of the concerns of Latino families right now is about immigration enforcement, right? So I would like to know what are the real world impacts you've observed when families have access or lack of access, sorry, for when families are experiencing this immigration enforcement, and how are you experiencing this on the ground?
Thank you for that question, Tanya. Um, Again, I live in a very highly concentrated Latino community. And so, sadly, as you all have seen, whether it's on your, social media threads and feeds or the news, um, things definitely have taken a turn when it comes to our Latino families being targeted, right? By ICE, the challenges of, or the lack of awareness from people that have a different privilege of how difficult it is to actually go through an immigration process if you're even eligible, right? So I feel our community, especially the Latino families with young children, have been deeply impacted more so in the last few months. Um, and it creates fear. I know that attendance in our early Head Starts and Head Start centers took a big hit because parents were afraid to take their kids to school. It impacted attendance. Obviously, that then turns into kids not being able to learn, losing, instruction. Um, Again, also feeling insecure, being even at home, not knowing who's that knock on the door. Um, And I will say, obviously, California, and especially I will speak for Los Angeles, right? We're a sanctuary city. And we do have a lot of organizations like Cheerla and just so many others that are very supportive of our immigration population, immigrant population, I'm sorry. Um, is there room for more? Definitely. Um, there needs to be things done and implemented that will allow families to feel safe again, to walk our streets, to not be afraid to drop off a child at school. Um, it was really sad. It's been really sad to see how some parents were picked up during their kids' graduations. Like, at what point did we get to this place, right? Where families don't even feel safe at the schools, and it's not because there was a shooting, right? Um, so, like I said, I think access, right, to legal help is a big challenge when it comes to immigration in our state. And I say that because even though there is legal aid in all of these places, their waiting list to get an appointment or their waiting list to get any type of services is huge, is extensive. There just isn't enough of it right now for our Hispanic, Latino, low income families, right? You need things free or you need them at a low cost, but you have to wait months and months on end, or you have to wake up at the crack of dawn on a Saturday morning at 4 o'clock in the morning to make line outside of a cheer law office, to speak in the hopes of speaking to an attorney. Um, and then they cut you off because 5 people ahead of you was the cutoff for that day of how many people could be seen. So yeah, there is a huge impact and uh, definitely a lot of room where we can advocate. And you know, I myself am married to someone who recently became a green card holder. So we went through our own personal process. And like I tell him, even when he didn't have a green card, your voice still matters, right? You're now with a green card are able to advocate for others who have not yet been able to obtain one. So I think the call to action in this area is nothing is too small, right? Your voice is definitely needs to be heard. And we know that fear is real and it's valid, but we have to find ways to encourage people and help people exercise their voices because that's the only way that we can continue to create change. And so I think that's what I would have to say when it comes to immigration and a call to action is that everyone's voice is important. There is no one here in California that their voice should not be heard.
Thank you so much, Joanna, for sharing this. And this is perfect for us to talk about a call to action. Like we have all this data. We know the issues. We've seen some of the policy advancements and what's being done in California. But what else can people do? What else can we all do to address these challenges, these inequities that Latino children face, that dual language learners face, and what can we do? So I'll open up for the panelists to give your call to actions to the audience. Who would like to
I'll start. I think, very, very, very easy for me. It's stay informed. As a parent, stay informed. Uh, know what's going on in your community, know what's going on in the state, know what's going on in the nation. I mean, that is a very basic call to action, being informed, because of course we all know that if you're informed, you're well informed, you can make some great decisions. So I would ask everyone to stay.
I can share next. So just building on what Joanna just shared as well. Just so much fear and just uncertainty and misinformation for our immigrant families. But again, also sharing what we talked about since the beginning is the importance of early learning for those first 5 years and how critical it is for children to attend high quality early learning programs. So we're part of a campaign with our partners at the Children's Partnership and Californians Together called All In for Safe Schools. And we've developed a toolkit and resources for early learning programs on how to create safe spaces for their immigrant families. And I'll share that in the chat. But that's definitely something that we can do is really ensure that our providers, early childcare providers are informed that they can share information with our families and encourage, our families to bring their children to attend these important programs for their development and growth.
I'm ready to chime. Oh,
Go
Joanna,
ahead.
okay, I
Go
couldn't tell
ahead.
Joanna was a meeting. Yeah, I think a call to action that I would uplift right now is bringing additional attention to English Learner Roadmap Policy, where we currently have an implementation plan development underway through both listening sessions and the advisory committees. So I'd really love for our community, our public, our parents to get involved in voicing their perspective. And I hope that with their partnership, we'll be able to truly and deeply implement EL roadmap policy. I think the other thing that I would want parents to know in particular is that they have the rights provided through the Global Education for a Global Economy initiative, which is Prop 58, which Carolyn mentioned earlier. And with parent voices, they are able to call for the implementation of dual language programs, provided that a district has the capacity to implement. We want parents to know that they have that voice. And then also one final thing I think is we really want to see the expansion of the state seal of biliteracy and biliteracy pathway recognitions program. We think these are really great opportunities to maintain that home language and to engage as families in the biliteracy journey. And so we would love people to take advantage of those opportunities as well.
Thank you so much, Alicia. And Joanna, I love hearing from you. So do you want to share something more about this call to action, about what parents can do, how they can advocate, and specifically for their children 0 to 3?
Yeah, so super important as a parent who's gone through the journey, getting involved, whether it's attending a parent meeting once a month, where you are, like Steve said, informed of what's going on, right? If you have the time, join the policy council at your children's center, or PTA. Get to know more parents, encourage them, because if you're informed and they're informed, right, then we have something to go on, right? It's better to have more people involved, more voices involved. And just knowing that you do have a voice, you are able to advocate not only for your child, but all Latino infants, and not just California, everywhere. Equity is for everyone. And so like I said, it could be something as small as just volunteering in a classroom, you know, um, giving words of encouragement to those underpaid teachers, and going in there and volunteering for 30 minutes, an hour, you know. It's the little things sometimes that we can do to encourage others to also, get involved. When you receive call to actions on your emails or from the schools, um, you know, the message is already pre-written for you. Send it out, to your Congress people. There's so many different things that, again, take very little effort, but can make a big difference. And, I can reiterate it enough that no action or no voice is too small. So get involved.
Thank you so much, and thank you to all our speakers and panelists. This was a very inspiring conversation. And I invite you all to check the 2025 National Latino Family Report. That's link is in the chat, and use this data in your advocacy efforts. Because as Jonah said, and everybody in the panel said, there's no voice that's too small. And we, as the Latino Infant Initiative, we want to support that effort, in this case, with the data that can help your advocacy efforts. So thank you so much, everybody, and please stay connected with Abriendo Puertas, APOD, and UnidosUS for future conversations.